Today I'll be reading you a story of Texas Fort St. Louis, later named Presidio de Bahia, later named Fort Defiance. Fort St. Louis has a long history of dating back to 1685, when the first explorers from France came to the wilderness that would someday be known as Texas and built the first known settlement on the west side of Garcitas Creek. In 1687, at the original site of Fort St. Louis, the French explorer La Salle glanced back as he and his men marched into the untamed Texas wild. He tried to still the nagging fear in his mind that all would not be well with the settlement he was leaving behind. The Karankawa had attacked the settlement some 20 times in the past 2 years, and he felt they would do so again as soon as he and his army were out of sight. 2 years after La Salle left the settlement, the Karankawa Indians once more attacked and destroyed Fort St. Louis. All but 5 of the 20 men, women, and children were killed. Some of the Indian women tried to save the wife and 3-month-old child of St. Gabriel Barbaro, the fort's commander, but the warriors made the mother watch while they tortured and killed her child. The violence did not end there. Barbaro's wife was tortured and killed by these same warriors. The children who survived the vicious massacre of Fort St. Louis in 1689 were enslaved in the Karankawa Indian village. After being rescued by the Alonso de Leon expedition, 9-year-old John Baptist Talon, one of the children enslaved by the Indians, gave the only eyewitness account of the massacre at Fort St. Louis. He told of the brutality that Barbara's wife and child suffered. Her ghost still remains in the surrounding area, the original site of Fort St. Louis. During quiet nights, she can be heard weeping, mournfully calling out her husband's name and begging him to save her and their child. Presidio de la Bahia was established at the site of abandoned Fort St. Louis in April of 1721, then moved and re-established several times between 1726 and 1749 to its present location. When Texas, under the command of Colonel James Walker Fannin, took over the fort in 1836, they renamed it Fort Defiance. The men suffered a devastating defeat to General Santa Anna's troops, however, and he ordered the execution of Fannin and his troops. The executions of the 342 men were carried out a short distance from the fort's walls, and the men's bodies were stacked and burned, then eventually buried in a mass grave. The fort now stands as a monument to the Texas soldiers who were killed in the bloodiest massacre of the Texas Revolution. Recently, while visiting the Presidio de la Bahia during a Cinco de Mayo celebration, Sammy and I were stunned to see the handsome blonde figure of Fannin walking among the participants of the parade. When we approached him, he smiled sadly at us and disappeared. During that same visit, the chapel bells rang loud and clear throughout the morning air, while several other visitors at the fort compound hurried to reach the small building. All was quiet and serene as we sat solemnly deep in prayer. As I sat in the small church, I noticed a tall woman dressed in black entering the chapel in a blast of cold air. Slowly, she glided to the altar of the chapel and lit a candle for the lost souls. Kneeling, she began to cry. As her sobs of grief increased in volume, I got to my feet and tiptoed to her, hoping to give her some comfort. The air surrounding the woman was extremely cold. Paying little attention to that, I gently reached out to the woman and asked if there was anything I could do for her. When my hand touched her shoulder, the mysterious woman in black disappeared into a cloud of mist. Stunned by what had happened, I stood motionless for a while. Then I went to search for more information about this woman and who she was. I learned that every few years, the same scene is replayed in the chapel and other areas of the fort grounds. Apparently, no one knows who the woman in black might be or for whom she grieves. But one thing is certain, the candle she lights continues to burn long after she disappears. According to some people I talked to, sometimes she is seen on the grounds early in the morning, so only the caretaker is out making his rounds. But she is not the only early morning visitor to the fort. Our next caretaker has also witnessed 2 men dueling on the grounds of the Presidio de la Bahia. He reports that every so often around the time of the new moon, dawn's light filters through the leaves of the oak trees. He can see the lady in black standing at the edge of the trees, just the shadows, watching across the dew-covered grass, her eyes piercing the filtered light. The caretaker said he stood mesmerized while he watched 2 other shadowy figures dance to the ringing of swords, parry and thrust, parry and thrust. Each Spanish soldier took the slightest advantage left by the other. Sweat dripped down from soldiers' faces in the cool morning air. Neither gave any evidence of knowledge that they were being watched, intent only on one outcome: death. A movement in the trees, the crack of a fallen limb, distracted one of the soldiers, leaving him vulnerable to his opponent's sword. He fell to the ground, and the sound of weeping echoed through the fog. The lady in black vanished into the background and the soldiers faded into nothingness. Upon searching the clearing, the caretaker found no sign of the recent bloody battle. There was no trampled grass and no bloody stains on the earth. Nothing was visible to suggest that he saw was real or merely a trick of his imagination. Many people I talked to have told of seeing the ghost of a headless Texas soldier riding through the compound atop a majestic white stallion. The tall, misty figure wears high leather boots, cream-colored pants, and a full-sleeved white linen shirt. A long red scarf where his head had once been flaps in the wind. As the rider's ghostly horse reaches the wall, the lady in the black appears holding her hands to her face, and her weeping grows louder, filling the air. Mysteriously, the rider in the white stallion galloped through her and blended into the shadows, not to be seen again until the next full moon. Several other people tell the soldiers buried near the mission's old stone church. Many of them believe that one or more of the soldiers compel another ghostly woman to search the Goliad compound. She's been seen dressed in a flowing white shroud. She floats across the compound late on cold misty nights, searching for her husband and child buried nearby. The camp superintendent told me of becoming acquainted with a visitor to the park who told him that he'd heard men's frantic voices and sorrowful moans of pain and suffering coming from the area of the 1836 massacre. He reported the smell of human decay, as well as hearing voices and the sound of footsteps on the wooden planks of the nearby village. Step for step, he was followed. He turned to see who was walking behind him, but no one was there. However, when he continued walking, the footsteps started again. The man had camped on the park grounds the night before, but refused to stay another night. Others told me of witnessing a young woman with black hair flowing down her back. She carries a baby wrapped in a blanket. They call her La Llorona, the weeping woman. She roams the darkness, crying over her dead baby.